You're listening to Blue, a story from the Zulu universe, written by Sam Renner, narrated by the voices at 11labs.io. Part 3. Raymond punched the button that called the elevator to take him back down to Zulu's main floor. His stomach turned when he stepped on, slow circles of unease that would only get quicker as his time to leave Zulu approached. He's going to wait for a shuttle, and he hated shuttles. Too small. Too many unpredictable pilots who didn't know what they're doing, especially flying into an asteroid. Blue Star took its time hiring cargo pilots, rounds of interviews, checking references, test flights on top of test flights on top of test flights, all to make sure the cargo these pilots hauled, these loads that had cumulative values into the tens of millions, made it out to whichever far-flung rock for which they were destined. Shuttle pilots, though. Shuttle pilots were passed the keys to a ship and told to keep her between the lines. The elevator dinged its arrival, and Raymond stepped off with his 2 duffels. He found his way to the benches that sat in the middle of Zulu's main floor and dropped his bags on each end of one of the seats. He thought for a moment, then unzipped the main zipper on the bag that held his Modi stash. He undid the zipper that held the interior pocket closed and dropped a hand inside to count the vials. 6. He knew it wouldn't be enough. He closed up the bag again, then reached into the pocket on his pants and pulled out his data pad. A couple swipes of his index finger brought up his credit balance. He winced. It wasn't much. Not for a man his age doing the kind of work he did. He was always out in the galaxy somewhere. No wife waiting for him in some fancy apartment back on one of the civilian-class ships floating the universe. The little hole did have on the Barcelona, just 1 room and a door, was full of nothing other than a growing nest of dust bunnies. He didn't have some expensive play-around ship he was sinking money into. Not that he hadn't been tempted by the idea. He wasn't a bad pilot in his younger days. He'd actually tested a couple of times with the company that would become Blue Star Mining. Never made it, more because of bad luck than insufficient skills. How different would his life have been if there weren't some military guys in each of his test classes to steal his future? He did get offered a position as an alternate shuttle pilot once upon a time, but he'd be damned if he was going to be some third-string flyer, and he definitely wasn't going to be a shuttle pilot. He hesitated a moment and looked at the convenience store and the short-haired brunette behind the counter. She'd dropped serious hints when he went in the other day for a toothbrush and a couple of pouches of potato crisps that he could get more than just necessities. "This is it?" she asked. Raymond nodded that it was. "You sure?" She waited for him to respond. "Doesn't seem like much of a night. We have things—" Here she paused for effect. "That can make an evening more fun." Could she tell? He wondered. Was the Modi coming off of him like a funk? He shook his head. She waited for him to change his mind, to act like he suddenly remembered he needed one more thing, then lean across the counter and whisper to her, "Modi?" like it was a question. But he didn't. Raymond kept his feet on the ground and stayed on his side of the counter, only smiling at her. "Okay, then." She rang up his pouches of crisps and new toothbrush. "But if you change your mind—" He smiled, took his purchases, and made a mental note. Just like last time, an electric bell chimed as he stepped into the convenience store. The brunette turned her head at the alert. "More crisps?" she asked. "And a little something else?" She gave him a quick nod and asked if he had a favorite flavor. "Yucatan? You asking if you'd like it?" Raymond chuckled and felt his cheeks go flush. "No, it's the one I like. You have it?" Tough to get this far out. Not many of the suppliers that keep us stocked like to make the fruity stuff, but I think I can find a couple vials. Give me a second. She dropped below the countertop and came up a moment later with 3 skinny vials about as long as an index finger. "This do? That all? I told you it's hard to get the coconut, pineapple, and mangoes you need to make those flavors." Raymond reached into his pocket and pulled out his data pad. "Then what do you have that's similar? Caribbean flavors?" Raymond nodded, an exasperated grin on his face. She was cute, but this was tiresome. I'm a junkie needing to stock my fix. Not looking for a lesson in drug production, he thought. The brunette dropped below the counter again. She came back up with 3 more vials, 2 Caribbean Dream, 1 labeled Ocean Blue. Raymond had tried Caribbean Dream before. It wasn't his favorite. Something about it left a bitter note at the end. And while the taste wasn't the reason he or anyone shot Modi, might as well enjoy the journey even if the high was the destination, right? He'd never tried Ocean Blue, but knew it was an old flavor, one of the original formulations that was supposed to leave the user in a beachside dream state. He told the woman those would be fine and laid his datapad on the counter. The woman placed her ID tattoo on top of the scanner. The pad beeped and the woman took her arm away. "How will that appear?" Raymond asked, scolding himself for not finding out sooner. "Personal credit transfer to your recorded physician. It'll look like a teleconference." Raymond waved his thanks and headed to the door. "Have a nice trip," she shouted over the bell, signaling his exit. Back at his bags on the bench, the new vials clinked against the old ones as he dropped them into the pocket inside his duffel. He sat down and looked over to the diner. A Blue Star man sat at one of the seats. His short-sleeved uniform shirt was clean and pressed. The thin black tie was clipped to his shirt just below his chest. His hair was trimmed tight to his head and held in place by a handful of some kind of pomade. He couldn't see it, but Raymond was sure as he knew his own name that there was a crease on this guy's pants that ran from his thigh to his ankle and ended just above a pair of polished black boots. Everything about this guy screamed military, and it dawned on Raymond this could be one of those old military flyers who beat him out for a pilot's job so many years ago. This guy's gone a little gray, and Raymond ran his hand through his own thick head of hair, still the same color as when he tested to be a pilot. If he had nothing else going for him, he had that. Was this his pilot? Was this going to be the guy who took him off of Zulu and helped him go intergalactic? But Raymond knew the answer was no. He wasn't that kind of lucky. A flight with this guy wouldn't need Modi. He'd give Raymond a little corner of the hull, probably a bit of secluded space behind some piece of impossibly big mining equipment. He'd leave Raymond alone for the length of the flight, drop him off with a nod. That'd be it. They'd not see each other again, and they'd both be fine with that. A speaker overhead crackled, and what it announced crumbled Raymond's little dream scenario. That was definitely not his pilot. His isn't the ship that Raymond would be riding out on. His ship had just arrived, and a few moments later, so did his pilot. That's more like it, Raymond thought, as he saw the guy step from the long hall that leads to Zulu's rings, where the ships connect to the station. Sloppy uniform, disheveled hair, a couple days' growth on his face. This was his pilot. At least his shirt's tucked in, Raymond thought as he grabbed his duffels and walked across the main floor to meet the man. "Headed to EHR 618? Raymond asked once he was close enough. "I am. You the guy I'm here to pick up?" "Raymond Hardstack." "Yep, you're the guy. Need to run an errand, then we'll board up and head out." The pilot contorted himself to look past Raymond and into the convenience store. "You know if that pretty little brunette is working today?" Raymond deflated. "She is." The pilot smiled and stepped around Raymond toward the convenience store. Raymond followed. Inside the store, the pilot grabbed a couple of cans of Bolt drink, a mix of sugars, caffeine, and other stimulants all designed to keep your body fully charged for hours at a time. Shuttle pilots seem to love the stuff. Raymond tried it once, and it made him so jittery that the world turned into a permanent blur, and he didn't sleep for 3 days. The pilot took his cans of Bolt to the counter and asked the girl if they had anything that might go well with these. "I might. You want to match flavors?" "Match. Compliment. Either is fine with me." The girl brought up a handful of vials from behind the counter. She showed them to the pilot, and he pointed to 3 of them. "Give me 4 more of each of those. Total of 12. Raymond marveled at the order. The pilot grabbed his things up off the counter. "Long flight. Gotta stock up," he says. He makes wide, crazy eyes at Raymond, like he's already downed a couple cans of Bolt before coming to get 2 more. That and the 12 vials of Mahdi made Raymond think for a moment about refusing the orders to fly with this pilot. They pass the diner headed for the long hall that will take them out to the shuttle, and Raymond sees the other pilot still sitting at the counter. What if he begged? What if he went over and got down on his knees and asked in the nicest way he could manage if he could get a spot on that captain's ship? What if he laid out his case and asked if he was going anywhere near the big rock Raymond was being sent to? "Just get me close. That's all I ask. I'll find a ride on my own to get me the rest of the way. Just don't make me take a trip with this guy." Soon, though, the clean-cut captain was out of sight, and Raymond knew he was stuck with crazy eyes. He sighed, Heaven help me. Blue is a production of SciFi Serials.com and 6-to-1 Books and Media. Want to keep up with when new episodes are released? Visit the site, sign up for the newsletter, join the adventure.